The first season of Silo came to an end with a finale that found the perfect balance between answering questions and leaving us wanting more. Juliet Nichols did some things that no one in living memory has done before her. She refused to clean, and because her suit was sealed correctly thanks to Walker getting supply to change out the heat tape, she not only survived the cleaning, but walked over the hill to leave her silo behind. Her world just got a lot bigger, and with Revelation comes a host of new questions, which are now situated on top of a pile of other ones that are still lingering, which isn't a bad thing necessarily. I'm not going to get into any specific book spoilers in this video, but I will say this before we get started. All mysteries in this series lead back to one thing: the silo itself. This sets up a sequence of layered reveals that keep going deeper, and the book series is very thorough in providing answers. Nothing is guaranteed, but with the success of the first season, it seems likely that we will get to see the complete adaptation of the story, which means you shouldn't have to worry if you'll get answers or not. One question that we know the answer to is that Season 2 is coming, and they're already filming it. This is promising since even though there's a lot of effects work and post-production that goes into a project like this, the fact that they're already filming means that we shouldn't have to wait as long as we do on some other big shows. By far, the biggest question on everyone's minds is what will Jules find now that she's walked away from the silo? Of course, those rings and sensor towers are exactly the same as what she just walked away from, indicating that there are more silos nearby. She does have a limited air supply in that small backpack she's wearing, which, if that is truly the only air she has, narrows down her options. One question I've seen a lot after the finale, and one that I couldn't answer without further investigation, was why you don't see Holston and Allison's body when the camera zooms out. The question itself was confounding because I thought the show did a good enough job of revealing that they were dead. So much so that when I watched the finale, I was just looking at all those other circles dotting the landscape. But because so many people brought this up in the comments of my episode 10 video, I went back and looked and also had a hard time seeing the bodies. Series author and creator Hugh Howey did a Reddit AMA after the finale where he addressed this, saying that if the bodies weren't there, then it must have been the CGI people missing a critical detail. User Mr. Notorious Man responded to that with an extreme close-up to show that the bodies are in fact there. And what jumped out about that was the scale of things, how hard it was to locate Jules because of how small she is. Going back to the wide shot now, I can see that there are some white pixels for all three characters, which is enough for me to consider this an answered question. Holston and Allison's bodies are still right where they died, just as the people inside see them on the screen. Another question I've seen a lot is how many silos are there? Based on the closing shot, there are at least dozens, which lines up with the most popular idea from people who haven't read the books, which says that the number 18 on Bernard's fob and on the hard drive indicate that our silo is number 18. I think the more interesting questions here are whether there's people in all of them. And if there are they all in the same program? Or whatever you want to call it. Are they all being controlled in this same way? And whether or not that's true, what does that mean? Why was this set up in the first place? And that leads into the next obvious question of why does the outside world look like that? The people inside the silo grew up thinking that they were the only people left alive from the before times. The official logline from the show reflects that, saying Silo is the story of the last 10,000 people on Earth, their mile-deep home protecting them from the toxic and deadly world outside. Knowing that there are other silos makes that first part seem unlikely. So then do we need to question whether or not they're on Earth? I guess that depends on what you think about this destroyed cityscape that you see in the background. It does resemble what you see here on Earth, but I suppose you could make the argument that if we went to other planets, we'd probably make the same kinds of buildings. But I guess at the end of the day, that's a question more about why are they inside the silo, who put them there, more than it's about what's going on with Jules at the end of the season. The person who might know more about this is Bernard, and that leads to the next question. What's behind the door that he unlocked with the fob/switchblade key with the 18 on it? The fact that that lights up hints at it being a signal, which has to come from somewhere. Because the lights weren't on inside the room when he opened the door, it doesn't look like there was someone inside calling him. Because the show has blurred the lines and given judicial a much larger role, while adding the surveillance room in the janitor's closet, I'm not exactly sure what's going on in the server room itself. It'll be interesting to find out what he does next. One thing I've seen repeated after the finale is that he rushed over there to open the doors and disable the display in Jules' helmet. I guess some viewers came to the conclusion that he disabled the augmented reality, the green background that she was seeing. That wasn't how I thought the scene was supposed to read. To me, it was just a reveal that Bernard knows more than everyone else, which is backed up by Sims not knowing what he meant when he said she knows. And the way they cut the scene after he opened the door is just a way to make us wonder what he'll do now that the cleaning didn't go as planned. I take Bernard at his word that he does what he does because he believes that it's necessary for the survival of the silo. It's the whole sacrifice of the few for the life of thousands to come argument. Why he believes that is the big mystery that's wrapped up in all of that. I think this mostly applies to Sims as well, only he is in a completely different position. He knows a lot more than the average citizen, he has access to all those detailed records about the relics, but the finale made it clear that he knows less than Bernard. That's why the idea of him becoming his shadow is important. That will have to involve some sort of initiation. In order for him to be able to take over for Bernard, he has to know the same things. So I wonder how much he knows at the moment, but it's more in the sense of how does he feel about that? We saw that conversation between him and his wife where I thought that she hinted that they had ulterior motives. I don't necessarily think these are dark motives. Perhaps her history of being a raider and some of what she saw during that period of time has had a lasting impact on her. I believe Sims does want to take over. He does want to become Bernard's shadow. But I also wonder what she means when she says they have one goal. Because that doesn't seem like she just wanted to get some power and maintain the status quo. And one other thing about Bernard, I wasn't entirely sure about the look on his face when Juliet mentioned the large metal door that George discovered. You could tell he was surprised, but I couldn't tell if that was supposed to indicate that he was surprised that she knew about it, or if he didn't know about it himself. Hugh Howey also addressed this in his AMA, saying that Bernard had no idea such a thing existed. This is interesting because there was also that scene where he was looking at the pieces of the hard drive he destroyed, which hints that he's possibly now wondering about what else he might not know. To this point, his faith has seemed somewhat unconditional. So if he's thinking about putting that hard drive back together to investigate, that almost has to lead somewhere. It's a little hard to speculate on the metal door itself after reading the book. The most popular idea I see out there is that it's a door that connects the silos together. But if that's the case, what's up with the water, and why doesn't Bernard know about them? These are both good questions that I may or may not know the answers to. The other character who I'm curious about is Billings. I'm really interested to know what kind of deal they made after Sims outed him for having the syndrome. How do we get to a place where both IT and judicial are willing to make an exception for him so that he becomes the next sheriff? Of course, we can see how they would want him in a place where they could control him, but it seems like it will get out that he has the syndrome. That may not go over well, it may not be good for morale, and I guess what's even more interesting than that is, where is Billings at in his head at the moment? After he saw the book and he burned it, he seemed to be on a different trajectory. So it's hard to tell how much he'll follow along with what they want him to do. And they might be in a situation where they need a strong sheriff. Jules walking away is going to cause some kind of reaction amongst the regular people. Walker knows they were using bad tape for a specific reason. And everyone in the Down Deep basically knows that they sent Jules out on trumped up charges that she probably didn't ask to go outside. She did keep up her end of the bargain. She didn't stir up any additional unrest on her way out. But how do the powers that be get everyone to just go along with business as usual after this event happened? You have to wonder how the Down Deep will respond, and what will happen to characters like Walker and Pete Nichols. We saw Bernard vindictively sentence Lucas to the mines. What will he do to Walker or to the people in Supply for switching out the tape? Will he see people who are close to her, like her father, as threats? I think that's most of the big questions I've seen bouncing around. What will Jules do next? What will Bernard do next? And how will the people left behind in the silo respond to this thing that just happened? Who were the founders and what were they trying to accomplish by setting things up like this? What would they think about somebody walking away after refusing to clean? What does it mean that there's so many other silos, and will we get to see the insides of those? Do they send people out to clean? Do they have flame keepers like Gloria trying to keep the memory of the before times alive in them too? And speaking of Gloria, was there anything to that idea that they put something in the water to make people forget? 2 quick things before I wrap this up. I keep seeing the theory that it isn't the air outside that kills the cleaners, but instead it's the gas they spray on them before they go out. I can't comment on that either way because I know the answer. But I did want to clarify what that's supposed to be according to the book in regards to Holston's cleaning, because the show never really addressed it. As he's getting ready to go outside, he's of the belief that it's argon gas that's used to prep the airlock so that none of the outside air gets in. You see that there's a fire after they go, and that's supposed to purify the chamber. Make of that what you will, but that's the way it's explained when it's first introduced. The other thing is that if you were following my coverage throughout the season, you might remember that I was confused when they showed the cafeteria screen glitch and showed the green hills and blue skies landscape that was similar to what the cleaners see inside their helmets for a second. Knowing ahead of time why the cleaners see it when they go outside made it really hard to understand why it would show up on the big screen or how that would even happen. And according to his AMA, Hugh Howey felt the same way. In that, he essentially said that he thought it was just included to give viewers something to speculate about, rather than it being a big clue as to what was going on. It didn't seem like he was a big fan of this particular decision. He does come up with a reason for how you could make it make sense, which is funny because I have one in my headcanon that's a little bit different than his. But the bottom line is that you might not want to invest too much time on trying to make that detail fit in with any grand theories you're putting together. And I think that's a great place to leave things. Season 2 can't get here fast enough, and if one thing stood out in my conversation with Mr. Howey, it was that he's really excited about what they've been filming so far. Please like this video if you enjoyed it. Please subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, and thanks for watching. I'll talk to you soon.